Every single night I woke up to the same sound. And at first I thought it was nothing, so I kept going back to sleep. However, as the weeks passed, it was not only that one sound that woke me up. It was also the feeling of a presence. When it was just the sound, I think I opened my eyes once or twice to look around, but I didn't see anything strange in my room. And the sound was not particularly strong, but it did sound as if it was near. And that's why it kind of scared me at first. And although I tend to sleep with my windows open, and you could literally hear anything that happens on the streets, especially during the night. But more than once in the past, this caused me to wake up thinking there was something going on in my room, or in my house, but it just happened to be something insignificant, like a raccoon or a dog or car, something like that outside. Regardless, I still prefer to sleep with my window open because my city is particularly hot, and often we've had problems with the air conditioner at home, especially in the summer, which, to be brutally honest, is a complete nightmare. Anyway, so around a week and a half after hearing this constant noise almost every night, I started feeling something weird in my room. Everything was normal until I heard the sound. But once I heard it, this angsty feeling started almost immediately. Now, I had no particular reason to think this. However, I couldn't help but feeling that somebody was staring at me, although there was nobody visibly around. And a couple of times I actually turned my lamp on just to be sure there was nobody or nothing strange. And there wasn't. I was calm because I knew nobody else was there, but I couldn't feel at total peace because of this uneasy sensation. You know, that sensation where you feel looked at, as if someone was monitoring your actions, when you see or hear nothing suspicious, but it just feels as if there was somebody else there with you. This warm feeling that stimulates another presence. Well, that's what I felt for about 2 weeks. So these problems during the night started affecting me. Of course, right? I never had problems with my sleep. Perhaps sometimes I would go to sleep a bit late, and some other times I woke up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom or change positions, but it wasn't that often. I could mostly sleep through the entire night without any problems until this whole thing started. So for the first 3 weeks, I tried to deal with it the normal way, trying to go to sleep earlier and trying to ignore the sound, not turning on my laptop or anything. You know, just trying to ignore everything. But it wasn't helping much. So eventually, I started calculating things. And that helped me notice the sound was normally at 2 a.m, and then it was instantly followed by the feeling of the presence. So I started thinking, maybe if I go to sleep after 2 a.m., then I will avoid it. So that's what I did. I stayed downstairs watching TV or playing video games with my brother. By the way, I live with my younger brother and my mom. And since this all started during the summer and both my brother and I were on holidays from high school and college, going to sleep late was not a problem. Once I hit the bed at 2:25 or around 2:30, everything was fine. I heard no sound, felt nothing in the room, and fell asleep immediately. And eventually, somewhere in mid-August, I had a phone call from a place where I had applied to get a summer job, back in June. And they informed me that they needed some temporary staff due to a few employees suddenly quitting. And they asked me if I was still available for a couple of weeks. I said yes. And that same day I went to speak to the manager in person, and I got hired. My schedule was from 9 a.m. until 2 p.m., which meant that I needed to try and go to sleep earlier, and possibly dealing with this random sound. And that night before going to sleep, I felt nervous. I was afraid I would start hearing and feeling the same as before. My mom noticed I was anxious, so she asked me what was wrong. And I haven't told her or my brother about what was going on before because, well, it's embarrassing. I'm a 21-year-old man, who shouldn't feel scared by stupid things. I already knew that everything was just possibly my head overhearing and then fabricating things. I didn't need anybody else, especially my brother or my mom, knowing about it. They would just make fun of me and tease me for being such a baby. So I just let my mom assume I was nervous about this new job. Mom had sleeping problems ever since the death of our dad, so she helped herself to sleep by using sleeping pills. She had some mild ones that were given to her by a previous doctor, and, well, she gave them to me. And I accepted them because, well, I was tired, and I was indeed having problems with my sleep through the whole summer. And so that night I took pills before going to bed, and everything was all right. I fell asleep around 12, which meant I was sleeping deeply around 2 when the sound normally happens. I didn't wake up during the night, and I slept until 7 a.m. the next day. It was the first time since the spring that I felt so rested and calm. And so my first day at the summer job went fine, so I decided to keep taking the sleeping pills. I did the same every night. Took a sleeping pill before bed. I took them around 10:30 or 11, and they acted quickly, because I was always asleep by midnight. Taking the sleeping pills was probably the best decision I could have taken. I was sleeping better than a baby. However, there was just one thing. Every day when I woke up, I started noticing bruises on my arms and legs. I had no idea why. And now I normally don't get bruises that easily. The only way I get them is if somebody puts lots of pressure, or if someone hits me very hard. And of course, nobody had hit me, and I hadn't hit myself against anything either. I couldn't remember falling or anybody holding me too tight, so I couldn't understand why I kept getting more bruises each day. I showed my mom and brother, and they thought maybe it was some kind of allergy-related issue. So I started changing my bed sheets more often, and trying to always wear fresh clothes. I also started cutting some things like dairy out of my diet. I had no idea, I was just grasping at straws at that point. But nothing would happen, and each morning there was either a new bruise on me, or some of the old bruises looked worse. Now something else was happening to me as well as these bruises. It was very strange. But I kept on getting these random images in my head. But they were no ordinary images. They were very strange and psychedelic. And some of them were images of space. Some others were images of random circles. And other figures that I couldn't understand. I also kept seeing lights. And these lights were definitely the worst. Because whenever I saw them, I got so dizzy, I needed to take a seat. And just as the bruises, these visions, kept getting worse every day, which also led me to be very tired at work. And so one day, actually the day before my last day of work, as I was bringing some clients their lunch, I had these visions again. Just random, psychedelic images attacking my thoughts. I started feeling very weak. I even dropped the lunch tray I was taking to the clients. And that's all I remember. Next thing I knew, I was on the floor with people around me asking me if I was okay. Turns out, I had fainted. I was so confused and weak, I was taken to the break room. And the manager asked me if I wanted to call an ambulance or if I wanted to call a family member or friend to pick me up. And I chose the latter. I called my brother. I just didn't want to make a fuss about it. And so my brother picked me up in the car we shared and took me home to get some rest. He insisted we should go to the hospital, but I just wanted to rest. I promised him if I was still feeling bad, I would go to the hospital the next day. And he ended up agreeing. And I also made him promise not to tell anything to our mother since I didn't want to disturb her. He agreed as well. The rest of the afternoon I slept. When I woke up, I didn't notice any new bruises or marks on my body. I went to have dinner with my brother and my mother, and then played some games with my brother. I still had no clue of what had happened earlier because well, I just felt fine. My brother and I came to the conclusion that these visions, the dizziness, and the fainting were a side effect of the sleeping pills. So I decided to stop taking them. And at this point, well, I was not worried about anything else. At 1 a.m., I decided to call it a night and went to my room. My brother went to his room to chat or something, and Mom, I believe, was already sleeping that night. I tried to get some sleep, but it was a bit difficult because I had already slept a lot during the day. So I was just there thinking and moving from one side to another. And eventually, after an hour or so, I heard a noise. It was that same noise that I always heard. And this time, I decided to ignore it. In fact, I decided to close my eyes and try to sleep instead of looking and worrying. And just like before, I had the feeling someone was there. But I didn't do anything. And after a few minutes, I heard some steps, which kind of freaked me out, but I still tried to remain calm, and I just repeated, "This is not happening. This is not happening." Suddenly, I felt a strong and cold sensation on my leg, as if something had bit me. My leg did move as a reaction, but the feeling was still there. It felt as if somebody was sucking on my leg, and it sounded so mad, I just kept ignoring it. But when I heard the slobbery noises, I had to take a look. So I opened my eyes and quickly sat up in bed just to see a deformed-looking creature holding my leg. My first reaction was to scream and kick it, and when I did it, the creature fell and rolled to the floor. I turned on the lights to take a better look, and I can't even explain how it looked. Its face and lips were similar to a fish. Its body was like a little human. It was skinny, pale, and had a hump. It was the size of a 6-year-old. He stared at me for a second before rapidly jumping out of my window. My brother ran into my room and asked me what was wrong. And eventually my mom came in too. And I don't even know what I told them, but it was clear that I didn't make any sense. And quite honestly, they thought I was still asleep. My mother checked all over the house, but found nothing. She then told me she would make an appointment with a therapist because she got the feeling I was under too much stress, and it was making me see things. And there was nothing else I could say that night so that they would believe me. I closed the window, and in fact locked it so that this thing couldn't get in again. And I made sure every door and window in the house was closed. And then I just sat in my room with my lamp on. I don't know why I had this idea, but I started to pick my bruises. You know, as you do when you get spots. But to my surprise, something came out. A very tiny round-looking thing that looked like a frog's egg. And once I had this thing between my fingers, I popped it. It made a breaking sound, and a dark green substance came out of it. And I started doing this with all of my 7 bruises. And out of the biggest one, even 2 or 3 eggs would come out of it. And I repeated the process until there was nothing else coming. It was utterly disgusting, but I knew I needed to do it. The next day, I was taken to the hospital, and they examined my bruises but couldn't explain why they were there. I didn't dare say anything. I didn't want them to think I was crazy. They later told my family they believed I had caused the bruises myself. I was seen by a therapist as well, and they asked me about the monster I told my brother and my mom about, and the bruises and the visions, but I kind of kept my mouth shut. I didn't say too much. Now I'm still at a clinic under observation because they're still trying to rule out the possibility of me being suicidal or having a mental disorder or whatever. And I've been here a week already. And part of me wants to tell people what I really saw so that they send me somewhere away from my house forever, so that I never have to see that ugly thing again. But I know what I have to do. I have to pretend to be fine so that they send me home and confront and possibly kill that thing. I'm not looking forward to it, but it sounds like the best I can do in order to protect my family. I just hope I could stand a chance against it.